Just to let you know, the State House District 50B covers most of Benton County and parts of Morrison and Sherburne County. It's a pretty big geographic area. We do have 3 candidates, Shane, Carla, and Myron. And the very first question, I combined 2 into 1, so it's a 2-minute question. Holly here is going to be giving you a 15-second sign. And can't read it very well, but that's that white 15-second. And then we'll be doing a stop kind of thing when it's time's up. And I'll interrupt you if I needed to. The first question is, for the first 2 minutes, please summarize your background and experiences and why you're running for office, and then list the top 2 priorities for the state representative position that you are seeking. And we're going to alternate, and the first one is Myron.
My name is Myron Wilson. I'm born and raised in the district. My roots go deep in this district. I'm 5th generation in Oric Township, and I believe 4th generation up here. My grandparents on this end were up at Estes Brooks area. The others are down in the Oric area. I am a retired state trooper. I have a career in criminal justice that started with the state reformatory and ended retiring from the State Patrol. My wife and I have bought a couple of businesses. We buy them when they're distressed and have turned them around and sold them. I currently own the farm I grew up on. I bought it from my brothers after my father had passed. I now raise turkeys and chickens there. I've been on the school board. I've been a school treasurer. I have been instrumental in setting up a rural TIF district. I believe that we have to do better than we're doing right now. I think the first thing we need is to start to cooperate between the parties, or no parties. And I believe as an independent, I'm well situated to be able to work between both parties. I would like to see the power structure change so the money is out of the system as far as special interests go. I believe a law should be passed on its merits and not because leadership's gotten a check from some special interest somewhere. I guess that's about where I'm coming from on this. Other than that, I think I'm the most experienced. I've been doing volunteer work with children and kids for 40-some years. I've taught at the University of Minnesota. I was a pilot for the air ambulance for them. I've also flown corporately. I've just kind of been a workaholic, and I think this is a continuation of that. Thank you much.
Carla.
Hi, thank you so much for having me here today. My name is Carla Skapansky. I graduated from St. Cloud State back in 1985 with a degree in criminal justice. I have always been looking for ways of finding answers to our problems that we have, and that's why I started where I did in the correctional field. I've done law enforcement. I have gone through the school system, working in every single school within my district. I have also did childcare out of my home for 15 years where I worked with the very little ones. I went back to school and got myself an early childhood education degree, which I funded totally on my own throughout the whole entire process. I also, after I got my degree, decided that it was time for me to step out there and do something more than just be a mom and a childcare provider. So I've been working on several different boards, especially through TRICAP as an executive on the executive board for TRICAP. I am also from the farming area. I've lived in this district almost all of my life, or have lived right across the river in the Sartell area where I've also done things like farming and things that are related to this district. I feel connected wholeheartedly to this district because I understand what has happened to us and not with us. I've been a part of many different policies and legislation down at the Capitol and watched what it takes to be a voice for this district. We need to have more people like myself down there speaking on behalf of what's been happening, not only to dairy farmers, but also to child care providers and what's happening within our school districts. I'm a mother of 4. All my 3 girls are off to college. One already graduated from college, and I see how they're struggling on that side of it also financially. Like I said at the beginning, I graduated from St. Cloud State, and I am fully funded my own education. But at this point, I see what's happening to them when they have to struggle with it. Thanks so much for your time, and I'll hand it off.
Hey, Shane.
Thank you. My name is Shane Macklin. I've spent 20 years in the petroleum industry, particularly in the convenience store industry. I'm currently a residential building contractor. One of the heaviest regulated industries we currently have, as well as ag. That's probably a big driving force of what kind of pushed me into this, as well as healthcare. Our budget being blown out of proportion at a time when we were in the second worst economic recession that we ever had, and our state decided to double their budget, which is one of the bigger driving forces of why I got into this. Recently, the state has announced they're going to do a study to spend a high 100,000, low 200,000 to figure out affordable housing, which I would be the first one to tell you, if they didn't have their fingers and everything, we would have affordable housing. Currently, we have some chronic issues coming forth, the legislation in the January of next year for the ag community, which is priority number one, because they're already, they get regulated and hammered so hard, and unfortunately for them, they don't get the opportunity to pass their costs along. So this is the areas that I'm very much concerned about. And I currently live in Becker Township. I have a little girl who goes to school in Becker, and education is another issue. We removed a lot of the trades from our schools, and currently in any of the trades, we are desperately hurting for help. The cost of building right now is skyrocketing due to the lack of labor and the fact that baby boomers are dipping out. The younger generation has no interest in getting in, or a large portion of them. So these are the areas that I'm very much concerned about. Thank you.
And then next we'll start with Carla. It combines several questions from the audience. Many citizens and businesses have told us about increasingly higher cost of their health insurance premiums, as well as pharmaceutical costs. During the next minute, can you share your thoughts about what should be done about these increasing costs and expenses, as well as ideas about the MNsure program? How can medical costs be more transparent, and do you believe in a single pay health system?
Yeah, you know, and I hear that a lot at the doors. Healthcare is the #1 issue, not just with people who are small business owners, but also for everyone across the board, from our retirees to our elderly. I understand what's happening here, and much like coming together on making something happen, I honestly think that's what we need to do. If it means that we need to buy into some kind of healthcare program that we all can be a part of in order to bring our costs down, then that's what the route needs to be. I know as a farmer, if our costs were $1,600 a month, plus we paid $5,000 out of our pockets. That's not counting how much we actually had to pay for our prescriptions when we went afterwards. It was very, very sad on what needs to happen for us out there, and we just don't know what route to go at this point. I'm willing to take any chances and looking at all options to make something happen for us. Thank you.
Shane?
I'm actually a firm believer in, when it comes to MNsure, to kill it, and kill it dead. Personally, for us, our cost went from $9,000 a year with a $4,500 deductible to our last quote was just under $22,000 a year with $17,000 in deductible. They did force us into a one-size-fits-all thing, and it clearly does not work. Personally, I'm for free market and make them compete for our business. And go back to the plan we had before, where the state had the safety nets for those who either had pre-existing conditions or didn't have the financial means to cover it. So my position is I'm very opposed to the socialized medicine. Thank you.
And Myron?
First off, the question is wrong. It should be, what do we do to control the cost of health care, not the cost of insurance? That's where we have to start. We have to start by actually having tort reform. We've had both parties for the last 40 years saying they're going to do something with tort reform. Nothing has happened. We've had lawsuits. Recently we had one that came down for $69,000, I believe it was, up $49,000 for damage, actual damages on a 50-year-old person with $160 million in punitive damages. You and I are paying those costs. We have to get that out of there. We also have to have price transparency so we know what it costs. Just in case my doctor's watching tonight, I have the world's best doctor, but I have no idea what he charges. I think that I should know what he charges. If I'm going in because I have a rash or a cold, I'll go to a $50 an hour doctor. My heart's going bad, a $500 doctor. Cost control is the answer. Thank you much.
Okay. The next question also comes from two different members of the audience, and we will start with Shane. And the question for just 1 minute is, how should school funding and that formula be changed to adequately address the disparity in the present formula? Or should you change it? What are your thoughts?
Well, school funding currently out here, we get, depending on the school, Becker has I think 12, right around 12 grand per pupil. Minneapolis, St. Paul, they're pushing, what, 23,000 per pupil, and clearly they don't have any better outcome, they actually have worse. I'm a big believer of the voucher system. I believe that if they had competition, they'd have to up their game and compete for those dollars. And I would personally probably alter and put my child in a school that was more fitted towards our conservative values. So that's my take on it.
Myron.
Could you repeat the question?
Sure.
Exactly?
How should the school funding formula be
Thank you.
changed?
I wanted to make sure we were dealing with the school funding
Yes.
formula.
Yep.
The formula itself is extremely complicated and has been around for decades. It's part of the problem that we have when we have money in the system with special interest. Everybody's pushing something different into that formula. That has to be pulled out. We have to start again. First up, we have to get local school control back to the schools and the school boards in the area. Now, that's not dealing with choice at all on this point. We also have to make sure that that school board is not having unfunded mandates pushed down on it from the top. We got to stop the way that we have transportation funding, early childhood funding, and all these other instances that are there. We need to also make sure that the social services are done in the human services department. Get rid of the duplication of services where the school is providing social services. It becomes too expensive, it becomes duplicate. We got to get those out of the system. The whole system needs to be changed. I do believe, though, that we need state funding to come down on special needs. They become a very, pun on words here, a handicap to any district because you cannot afford them when you have a student that's costing $200,000 a year when the normal student's at $10,000. Thank you much.
Carla.
Thank you. A lot has to do with the standardized testing that really scares me when it comes to funding. The poor littles are getting taught to the test, which is really not what needs to be looked at. My son was looked at as an individual who didn't like being a test taker, so because of that, it just reflected the whole entire school, and that just was not okay with me. And as far as when it comes to individuals within the school system that need extra training or extra people to follow them around in schools for special needs, again, all that funding issue just really scared me with these little ones. Thank you.
Also for a minute, we'll start with Myron. The House and the Senate in Minnesota have passed a bipartisan conformity tax bill this past spring that would have lowered state income tax and simplified tax returns to meet the federal reductions that were made in taxes and reporting. But it was unfortunately vetoed by the governor. Should our taxes conform to the federal, or are there other changes that you recommend?
The very first thing I would do when I get to St. Paul is to make sure tax conformity is on the bill and passed before the 1st of February. We need that on the governor's desk. We need that signed. It's going to cost each and every one of us, depending on our budgets here, somewhere between $1,000 and $5,000. We need that fixed.
Carla.
I'm going to buddy on that also. I do believe it needs to be conformed.
Okay. And Shane?
It will be one of the first things. I've been in conversations with many of the different representatives down there. It is one of the first pressing things, and obviously we'll have a new governor, so more than likely will be passed. And, it'll be right away.
Okay, thank you. Another 60-second question. Counties have been receiving unfunded mandates in health and human services, particularly in the mental health area. This has occurred in schools as well with special ed programs. So for the next minute, what are your thoughts about unfunded mandates to local units? And we'll start with Carla.
Unfunded mandates are across the board happening in all venues, not just in education. Early childhood, child care providers had unfunded mandates, farmers have unfunded mandates. Once something gets mandated, if they expect us to put it into place, they have to help us fund it. There's just no way that we can go that extra mile to make it happen without that. So I really do not believe in unfunded mandates at all.
I agree. I do not believe in support unfunded mandates. It puts undue financial burdens on, the school's already got its budget, but so does everybody else, including the farmers. Like this buffer mandate that came in, there's conversation now about giving them a $50 per acre tax credit. My question to that is, that's only covering the property tax. Who's talking about the loss of revenue? And then obviously the value of the land, if they had 100 acres but now only 90, if it's tillable, it's worth less. Where's the compensation for that? So that's another unfunded mandate that was not well thought out.
Myron.
We're going to all agree on that one. Unfunded mandates have to stop. Unfunded mandates are a technique that the government or the legislature in the last 50 years have used over and over again to balance their own budget. When they have something they want as a pet project, they push it down on the counties, the school district, the township, or the cities, and say, you pay for this. That's ridiculous. If they want it, they pay for it.
Thank you. The next question is also 60 seconds, comes from the audience. Minnesota enjoys beautiful lakes and rivers, but some of the lakes we've ended up with invasive species. What should the state government and the House and the do to assist in keeping our lakes and rivers clean and protected?
Currently, I was on the Benton Soil and Water all-day tour, and that was a big part of the topic, the different things that farmers are implementing to protect groundwater and as well as water quality in the lakes. Many of them are investing amazing amounts of dollars to protect it. This falls under the DNR. Sometimes they go like over the top, and these things are spread by so many different things. Yes, it's boaters, but it's also wildlife. Waterfowl transfers a lot of this stuff back and forth between different lakes. Obviously, the Little Rock Lake, they were going to drain it down and try to clean it up. It didn't happen on account of a little issue that they didn't have a federal permit in place. So it's going to happen supposedly next year, but that does fall in the DNR. There's a lot more to it than just that. The buffer falls into this thing, as well as septic systems that are non-compliant if they're on lake shore. That also falls into this. So there's a lot of things to address within it.
And Myron?
Invasive species are a problem we have and we're going to have from now on. When we went to a globalized economy and we start bringing things from other places, there's going to be hitchhikers. That's what we're having to deal with. I think that we have to continue doing research into them. We have to use common sense and try and stop the ones that are real problems. And like last week, we had those little ladybug things out there biting us. They come in, and they were actually an experiment that went wild down in Louisiana. We have to be more careful with those things when we introduce them. We have to make sure that we have some way to control them or some kind of a kill switch on them when we have a problem like that start. Other than the rules we're doing as far as us locally, when you move from a lake to lake, clean your boat, get the weeds off, make sure there's no water going. As Shane said, birds, animals, everything carries them. We just have to do our best. Thank you.
And Carla?
Thank you. And I'm a farmer, so I'm getting it from both ends, not just because we do have several acres that we till. I also live very close to several lakes, and I've been part of the Benton Soil and Water and that whole situation also. So I'm seeing what's happening, and what I am doing is I'm keeping my eyes open and watching for best practices and what is working throughout our state, because we're not just inventing the wheel here, folks. It's been happening all over, and everyone's experiencing it. So there's got to be a way to find some answers to these problems. The buffers were brought up and how that's been an issue, but at the same time, there's got to be some answers to help make things better down there. And I know we had that drawdown, and I know we actually, as a member of the Rice Area Sportsman's Club, we donated plants for bringing that back up again. Maybe that's what we need to do again. Thank you.
And we'll start again with Myron. For 30 seconds, not a lot of time, if elected, how would you use your position as a state representative to help Foley create new employment opportunities?
Well, the first thing we need to do is get high-speed internet out here. We need internet statewide. For the money that we're spending on that, or attempting to spend on the Southwest Rail, $1.8 billion, we could get high-speed internet across the state. We could relieve some of the traffic on the roads by bringing those jobs out here to become work-at-home jobs. There's no reason to commute for them. I think that we have to do tax incentives when necessary. We have to do something to keep our kids back here. One of the things I think we should do is looking at a difference in corrections and bringing more of the corrections out to the rural area. In general, and it doesn't help Foley, but we do have the Prairie Correctional Facility. I think that should be purchased and ran to relieve crowding in the prisons and help the rural jobs. Thank you.
Okay, Carla?
Well, it's like, where do you start at this point? I would love to see the North Star come out. I would like to see incentives for starting new businesses. I would like to see at least us getting a fair shakedown at the Capitol. I don't think that we are getting our fair share in any of the areas, especially when it comes to broadband. We just had fiber put in about a month ago. We're expected to keep up with all the other rules and regulations that go hand in hand, but yet we don't get a fair shake in having any of the incentives. Thank you.
And Shane?
Infrastructure and investment is probably one of the biggest things that both of them mentioned. Internet's one of the biggest problems out here. There was some federal and state grant money that came out like a year and a half ago. It didn't really cover that much area. What I will say is I had actually inquired about running the internet to my house, fiber. I was quoted $25,000 per mile. Once the federal grant went out, it was 37,500 miles of what they were charging under state dollars. So I guess I'm out of time here, but that's a big part of it.
Okay, thank you. Another 30 seconds. Some citizens, I'm combining two questions. Some citizens are concerned about the recent influx of illegal immigrants, particularly in the St. Cloud area. And the second part is, are you for or against the bill to make Minnesota a sanctuary state? And we'll start with, it would be Carla.
You know what we need to do is we need to educate on what's actually happening out there. We need to look at the whole picture when it comes to our immigrants and why they are coming into our state. There are reasonings why they're coming this direction. We need to get behind exactly what the story is and help in that area and understanding so we can have an open mind to actually immigrants and what's going on. Do I support them all coming in illegally? No. Do I want them to be coming in legally? You know what? That would be the best route.
Okay, Shane?
First and foremost, no, I do not support a sanctuary state nor a city, and I would do everything I could to prevent it. As far as the refugee program, it has pretty much been halted by our current administration. There's virtually nothing left. The problem we're having now is they're migrating from states where they already are because our welfare is completely out of control here. So my take on it would be to implement or enforce the laws that are in place about the waiting periods for welfare benefit.
And Myron.
We spent $736 million on illegal health in 2017. The refugees themselves are not a problem. The secondary migration is. And as Shane mentioned, our welfare is a problem. I would like to change our welfare for immigration between the states even. I believe it should be a graduated system. You have to be here 5 years before you get full welfare. Under that, you lose a percentage each year so that people aren't moving here just for the welfare. There's people moving to Minnesota just to get a raise. Thank you.
This time we'll take, I think 60 seconds is good. With the 7-county Twin Cities metro area having 55% of the state's population and Foley is just an hour away from its western edge and in a more rural area, what thoughts do you have about the urban-rural divide in the state house that can appear on various issues? And we will start with Indy Shane.
Well, obviously there's a big difference between our values out here and the people that are in the inner city, and that's kind of a no-brainer. They pretty much carry our vote for us on statewide offices. We haven't held one in a long time, from a Republican standpoint, that is. I don't even know where to start with this one. It's so huge. So we have to, I guess we have to put our foot down, get our people out there to go vote, because of the stuff that's like this, these people who want the sanctuary status, it completely defies all logic, in my opinion, to eliminate law enforcement. Is the direction they want to go down there, and I don't think anybody up here wants to go in that direction. I know I don't.
Okay. Myron?
I'm sorry, I lost the question.
Okay, yes, looking at the urban.
Oh, yes, I got it. Okay, thank you. We have a very blended area right here ourselves. We have a rural area up south here, up north here. In the southern area, we have more residential areas, and it's a little denser populated. I believe we need to do things to try and make sure that people coming up here know this is basically a rural area, and I think we have to try and be good neighbors. It's going to be difficult for everybody. As far as for the state itself goes, I think we should be looking at something. If I had my druthers and was king, I would do something so that we had a Senate that was actually based on geographical area and represented the outstate, or each area outstate, so that we didn't have 60% of our legislators in the cities. That hurts us, especially when we're out here. That changed in 1964. It should go the other way.
And Carla?
Absolutely, but yet at the same time, I see that we need to come to the table and have that conversation. You got to be able to sit there and across from people who do not have the same like values as you do to have those conversations, and they're not easy to have. As you knock doors as a Democrat within this district, obviously it hasn't been that easy for me to do. But at the same time, I have a lot of values that align with both sides. So So as your legislator, I'm the type of person who's going to come to the table and we're going to have a conversation on making things work for all of us because we won't be able to do it on our own. Thank you.
And the next one we're going to do would be with Myron. And this has to do with MNLARs. Local register offices have had difficulty this last year in doing vehicle licensing renewals. My daughter is still waiting. It's from July she applied for a name change on her driver's license, and it's now the middle of October, so 90 days. What do you suggest be done? And we'll give you 30 seconds.
I suggest we throw it out, go back to the old system. This is a perfect example why we don't have bureaucrats designing software for us. It's cost us more money than it should have. We should have contracted that out in the first place. We wouldn't have this problem. That's my answer.
And Carla?
Yeah, we need to have some kind of competition in there to make something happen because, you know, that's totally unacceptable. My daughters also have that same thing going on. Thank you.
Shane?
It was actually Governor Dayton who, this used to be a contracted out IT production. He took it back and put it to within the state employees. If it was contracted out, they would be held accountable with either bonuses and or fines for failing. And we've spent almost $1 billion on between MNsure and MNLARs, and they're both horrible failures.
The next question also for 30 seconds. One of you I know had mentioned it. The legislature passed an extension of the North Star Rail Service corridor to St. Cloud last year, but it was vetoed by the governor. How would you vote if this came up again during the legislative cycle? And we'll start with Carla.
Absolutely. Say, you know, I've been sitting down with folks in different townships throughout the district, and back in 2016, they were not in favor of making something happen, but after they actually got on the North Star and took it down to the city, they realized how much of a benefit it would be. Until you get on it and actually experience how it can benefit you, you don't understand how much of it would be. I've talked to individuals all the way up the rail area, even into Rice, and I honestly would support the expansion of the North Star.
Okay, Shane?
Unless they can prove they can do it a lot cheaper, I would not support it. Currently, we subsidize every rider on that thing like to somewhere to the tune of $44 each rider. We currently could lease them a Mercedes and perfectly pay all their expenses, and it would be cheaper for us, the taxpayers. So at this point, I don't.
And Myron?
At this point, I would probably not do a wholesale expansion of it. That said, we take in roughly $2 million in revenue and spend $22 million for the North Star we have. Before we do anything more with trains, I think we have to make this one profitable. If they could show me that by going to Clear Lake or St. Cloud that they can make it profitable, I may be willing to look at it. To say without seeing the numbers in the research, you're shooting a pig in a barrel.
And for your concluding question, for the last minute that you have here, why are you the best candidate for this office? Is there anything else you need to tell us about yourself or a view that you haven't been able to share? And we're starting with Shane.
I've been in business my entire life. I understand regulations. I'm constantly hammered with them. I deal with every single state department, I think, based on what I do now. There are pressing issues that are coming forward. I have spent hundreds of hours since the endorsement convention understanding the whole electrical grid and all the powers that means to us because of both the charcoal plant as well as the nuclear plant. There are so many big things coming forth right away in January, and I've spent endless hours with the current legislators getting my brain wrapped around all of what we have to know, and I do believe I will do a very good job. And I have the endorsement of both Representative Jim Newberger, Senator Andrew Matthews, Senator Mary Kiffmeyer, as well as former Senator Dave Brown.
And next would be Myron.
I'm going to say that for the last 40 years, both parties have been in control. In 1997, we had a state budget of $17 billion. We had $15 billion in the hole. Last year, we had a state budget of $37 billion, and we were $51 billion in the hole. I think it's time to let an independent come in and give it a try. I'm willing to look at both sides and take the best of both areas and put them together. We need accountability. I actually would support a bill that was introduced by Representative Knobloch last year and reintroduce it this year, that the legislators serve without party designation so we can get rid of the World Wrestling Federation fighting, and we can actually get to business of legislating and helping the people of our districts.
Carla.
Thank you. I'm a people person. I'm the type of person who wants to go to the Capitol and actually listen to what the problems are and actually find some solutions. It's been such a fight and bicker going on down there, and yet people need to look at the fact that they need to be role models for our district. They need to be people out there that people can look up to, not individuals that they are disgraced by. I've been an educator. I've been across the board working in every different venue from early childhood all the way into working with individuals who have many different issues. So I feel I'm the best qualified because I've also been on the farm and have been the person who had to receive some of the issues that were happening throughout this district. I've been a lifelong individual that's been a part of this community, and I've taken care of everybody, a lot of people's individuals' children in this area also. So thank you.
Can we give a round of applause for all those?